Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, the creator and host of the award-winning podcast that you're listening to right now. Thank you so much, called Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. It is a daily podcast, 365 days a year, and each day we talk to an author about all of the things related to their career, their book, their life, and more in 30 minutes or less, because who has time? I am now an author myself, although I wasn't when I started this podcast, and you can get my new memoir, Bookends, a memoir of love, loss, and literature, wherever books are sold starting July 1st, and my children's book, Princess Charming. You can learn more about me at zibbyowens.com, but really you're here to learn more about the authors, and that is what we're going to do. Also, be sure to check out all the other podcasts in the Zcast Podcast Network. You can learn more at zcastnetwork.com and definitely check out those shows as well. Karen V. Johnson is the author of Living Grieving, Using Energy Medicine to Alchemize Grief and Loss. Karen is a graduate of Georgetown Law Center, a former Fulbright Scholar in Afghanistan, and holds master's degrees in public health and public and international affairs, MPH, MPIA. Karen is a retired federal administrative law judge who practiced criminal and energy law for more than 30 years. She is also a former U.S. Army officer, Major, USAR, inactive. Karen was personally trained by Alberto and is faculty at the Four Winds Society and a master practitioner of energy medicine. She has trained extensively in the techniques of illumination, soul retrieval, extractions of energies and entities, divination, and death rites. Living Grieving, Using Energy Medicine to Alchemize Grief and Loss is her first book. Welcome, Karen. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Karen, you wrote so beautifully, and it's such a sort of a gut punch as a reader to read what happened with your son Ben and his overdose, and you're finding out about it when you were in cell. I mean, your story, oh my gosh. And yet you've turned it into a gift for everybody else to help them get through whatever grief they have to get through. Tell me a little bit about what happened, how you've decided to write this book, and all the sort of modalities you want to introduce the rest of us to.
Sure. Yeah. So, gosh, I think I was pretty much unconscious, going along, living my life. And I knew that my son was struggling, but, so many young men are, and young women, right? And so he wasn't an addict, but he went to a party and got drunk, and they decided they were going to try heroin, and they gave him too much. He's a big guy, 6'8".
6'8". Wow.
6'8", and 275 pounds, whatever. So they gave him a lot, and he died almost instantly. And he and I were really super close. And I had decided when I was going on vacation, when I got from vacation, we're going to sit down and have this talk. He was super smart, but didn't want to go to college and wanted to have his own business and, so many things. And so I decided we needed to talk because he seemed like he was struggling. And so I get this call in South Korea, and I don't usually pick up calls. I don't know, but I had been feeling terrible all afternoon. And so I called right back, and the person that picked up was a detective. And she said, "Are you Karen Johnson? Are you Ben's mother?" I'm like, "Yes, what's happened?" And I said, "Is he okay?" And he said, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm in South Korea. What's going on?" And he said, "I'm sorry to tell you, but he's deceased. He died." And I'm like, "From what?" "A heroin overdose." Oh, so, my whole world fell apart, and so it took me about 24 hours to get back to the US. And while I couldn't even, so I got the call at night in Korea, which is daytime there, and I couldn't get a flight out until the next morning. And so on the phone all night with family and friends. And gosh, it was just, I don't even know how to express it. Life-ending, life-changing. And so I went to the airport the next morning to get on a flight and was sitting waiting, and he shows up in front of me, just like his big self, smiling, happy, and then he fades away. So I had no context for this. I wasn't a spiritual person whatsoever. And so I called my ex-husband and said, "You got to go to the ME. I think he's alive. I think he's trying to get out. I think he came to me, and I think he's alive." And so he called the ME, and the ME looked and said, "I'm sorry, but he's gone. He's not alive." And so, sometimes death is a doorway. Death was a doorway for me into a spiritual life, and actually finding out that there is more on the other side. So we don't just die. We don't just disappear. they're there. They're right there on the other side. And so that started this beginning of me becoming clairaudient, clairsentient, and beginning to see deceased people on the other side. And of course, my son, Ben, who stayed with me for really one-on-one, stayed with me for a really long time because I was in a really bad place. And I think a lot of parents can really relate to this because either if you've lost a child, you know how it is. And if you are watching your child go through addiction or illnesses, it's like a little death every day. And so, so here we are trying to figure out, what do we do with our grief? How do we deal with this? And I did the unexpected. So grieving people are sort of like divorced people. We don't deal well with them in our society, right? We sort of want to avoid it. So we know that there are life-changing events in society. We know marriage and parenthood, and we celebrate. It's wonderful. Death is also life-changing, and it has a lot of energy that we can tap into, but we don't want to talk about that. Right? We want to kind of stay away. And I tell people it's time to move on. It's time to get over it. It's time. I don't know whose time this is, but for me, that time frame didn't work. So I did the unexpected and unimaginable. I sold all my household goods and my car, and I ended up traveling the world for 2.5 years, talking to spiritual leaders all over about grief and death and dying and what are we supposed to do and how are we supposed to go on. And I thought, well, I'll just write a travel blog, right? So meeting with shamans in Africa and Sufi masters in India and all over. But it ended up to be so much more. And along the way, I found a shamanic practice with the Four Winds and Alberto Villoldo. And it was a beautiful spiritual practice. And the blog turned into a book, and the book has 16 practices in it to help people to come from this stuck place of grieving so intensely to becoming lighter, and then eventually creating a new life out of the old one, out of the ashes of the old one that honors our loved one. So we always want to be honoring our loved one. And so everybody is stuck somewhere differently. Sometimes it's in judgment. One of the practices is non-judgment. And so Ram Dass so beautifully has this saying that I love, that you go out into the woods and you look at trees and they're all different. One is twisted this way and one's that way. One's high, one's low, one's green, one's not. And we don't judge them. But when it comes to ourselves and to other people, our judging mind comes in. And so this practice is a way to look at who are you judging and who's judging you. And how might we do that, you might say. So we want to get out of our everyday mind, fighting, fear, everything that's in that everyday reptilian sort of brain. And we want to move up to our neocortex. This is the place of ceremony. And so what I want people to do is sit in ceremony quietly with a candle, anything else that means quiet and serenity, maybe sage or however you want to do it, and have a piece of paper or a little notebook and pen and paper, a little pie pan to hold your candle. And we're going to release our prayers and release our judgment, release our suffering into the flame and let it go to God, the universe, whatever your religious aspect is. And we're going to do this in a very ceremonial way where it can move like a wind blowing feathers in the breeze, as opposed to trying to drag along at the physical level. So there's lots of books that talk about the things you need to do. You need to go out on a date, or you need to go to a movie, or you need to do this, and this is how you do it. That's all in this physical realm, and it's very hard. And so many people tell me, I'm not ready, I can't. And I understand that, I couldn't either. So my book is sort of a precursor to that. Let's find out where we're stuck first. Let's release and release and release all the things we're holding, stories even. I should have done this. I should have done that. How many people say, I should have made them go to the doctor. I shouldn't have gone to Korea. I should have done, right? So we get all of this in our heads when we put it write it down in paper with the intention of releasing it, letting spirit have that and opening our hearts to new ways of seeing things. we can find that release. We can move on. And not that pain is ever going to go away. I always tell people, I don't have that magic wand. I wish I did. I could tap you in the head and it wouldn't be painful anymore. But pain is the price of love. And so the pain stays with it, but the ruminating and the fear and the anxiety and the judgment, we can release. So what we're left is just missing them instead of beating ourselves up.
Wow. The fact that you have provided this path through what seems like an impossible journey to get through is so amazing. Can you tell me a little more about the spiritual, like how you've made sense of connecting with the other side, essentially, and how we all can do that? I think anyone who has lost someone suddenly realizes that there is more, and they see signs, or they believe when they thought they would never believe. But once a piece of your heart has been sort of carved out of you and gone elsewhere, people quickly say, oh, wait, maybe there is, maybe I feel it now. So can you give more specifics even of how you see that, how you view that, and how you understand now Ben's appearance to you back then?
Yeah. So people always ask this and say, I wish I were like you. I wish I could see my loved one and talk to them and speak with them. And so what I like to say is sometimes it's a process. So we all have been raised with this concept that only the facts, right? Our left brain keeps us safe. Whatever we can see, sense, hear, touch, real, don't rely on your intuition, because that will just lead you astray. Just go with your brain. So it's that process of opening up and saying, maybe there is more. And I always call it that frankly freaky discussion that people like us, the ones who are survivors, know that we can sense, feel our loved ones around us. And what do we make of that? Sometimes we don't even want to tell our friends and relatives because they're going to say, oh, she's gone over the edge, right? So there's no win in grieving. If you don't grieve long enough by somebody's standards, they'll say, oh, she didn't seem to affect her much. And if you grieve too much, then it's that DSM, right? That's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. You need medication. So, we're kind of in between a rock and a hard place. And what I like to tell people is, tune into yourself. There's no time. We can't tell people how long it is that they're going to grieve or how they're going to grieve. The only person that knows this is us. And if you know that you're on a journey, then you can kind of say, okay, I'm in a journey. I'm on my own journey. And part of this journey is going to be opening up to the other side, to not seeing death as this completely horrifying, terrifying experience, but part of life and a transition from one state of being to the other. And as we allow ourselves to relax a little bit, we begin to sense more, see more. And somebody said to me once, I know that my loved one's around when the wind chimes and there's no wind. Right. And so it's those little subtle things. You may not hear their voice or see them physically, but you just maybe a touch on your cheek, or a wind chime going, or a butterfly, or something that they loved, or something with their name on pops up. So we begin to look for synchronicities and open up to that. Then we can get in touch with them much easier. And as we do that, as we begin to heal ourselves, we kind of let go of their kite strings a little bit. So we don't want to keep them stuck from all the beautiful things they do on the other side, which Ben tells me all the time, this is not eternal slumber over here, Mom. I am really busy. I'm working with ascended masters. I'm going here. I'm going there. I'm doing this and that. And so we want to heal ourselves and become unstuck from our grief so that they too can go a little higher, so they can do more of what it's possible to do on the other side.
Wait. Let's go back to the reports from Ben here. Okay. What can we expect on the other side? What's he doing? Do they have days? Like, are there days filled with activity? Like, tell me, what do you know that the rest of us don't know? I want to know this.
Okay. So Ben came to me and stayed with me for a really long time. And so in the beginning, he found friends, right? Some other younger people that crossed over, and he seemed to have friends that he would travel with. And so they had a good time kind of zooming all over the earth and visiting wherever they wanted to visit. And sometimes I went on vacation to Costa Rica and I was zip lining, and I wasn't going to zip line. And all of a sudden I had this thought, I just really have to do this. And I knew that Ben was with me. He was kind of doing, and all of a sudden I'm upside down and doing these tricks. And I'm like, Ben, please, I'm like 65. Don't kill me here. So in the beginning, I think it was that excitement of, oh my God, I'm so free. I'm free of this body. I'm free of this. I can go anywhere and do anything. And then later, it seemed to be that he was in pods of learning with ascended masters. So one time, as always, it's death day and birthdays that are really hard for people. And so it was a death day. And I said, oh, this is so sad, Ben. I really need you to come visit me. And he shows up and he says, Mom, quit ringing my doorbell. I'm fine. And I'm in the Jesus pod. And we weren't particularly religious. And he's not like anything in the Bible. But I'm in this pod and we're learning. And so don't ring my doorbell. You're fine. You're fine. And and he actually said, you're kind of being a bummer about this. This whole sadness thing where you're going over the top when you know very well that I'm perfectly fine and happy. So that was another sort of instruction to me that maybe we kind of are looking at this in the wrong way. Maybe we're kind of being a bummer. We've been so socialized and conditioned to seeing death as sad and morbid and holidays. And when it gets all sad and morbid, and first thing you know, nobody wants to talk about it, or I don't want to talk about it. You don't want. What if we're seeing it wrong? What if could be a celebration? What if it could be bring them into the party instead of this over the top sadness and despair and hopelessness? And so lots of good information from Ben about I think sometimes only a 27-year-old guy can tell his mom, like, Mom, you need to knock it off. Quit ringing my doorbell, right? So and so I think maybe we need to hear that.
Wow. Oh my goodness. You wrote about Ben's struggles sort of on earth, right? Before he passed away, and how he kind of never felt at peace with his body, that he had his spine had required surgery, his feet, that he may actually have had this other diagnosis that you found out after he passed away.
Right.
And he just never felt like he fit in. Do you feel like the peace you feel at his passing is related to him feeling like he has found a spot for himself, or he doesn't have to deal with his body? Or is there anything related to that? Or maybe I'm just being crazy,
Oh, I think that's exactly right. I think anybody who has physical issues, a friend of mine has a son that was in so much pain and on pain all his life from that he actually committed suicide, but on the other side, free and happy. And so I think sometimes, the physical body, the emotional body, all the things that are happening and fitting into society, and young people are trying to understand this world that's gone so crazy environmentally and in every which way. And so they're free of this. And I think if I could say about Ben, he's so much happier now than when he was in Earth. He just never fit. I'd try to send him to camp and he wanted to stay home. He's like, Mom, no. And I said, you got to, go to school and you've got to, succeed and you've got all these things you've got to do. And he said, I'm not going to be here that long, Mom. And this is when he was 8 or 9. And I'd say, no, don't be silly. Of course you are. You got to do this, you got to do that. But I think he always knew something I didn't know, that he came into this lifetime to cure this karmic situation and to learn and grow and to leave, and maybe help me to become a spiritual person, maybe open the doorway for me and for my daughter and our family and all those that I can touch with this book, that I can help become unstuck, that they too can change their perception and find their lives again, these lives that are so precious. One thing that death teaches us is how precious life is.
Right.
And so to get back in touch with life in a way that honors them and free them too, to go about what they're doing on the other side.
Do people ever tell you like that you're nuts? Like that they
Yeah.
totally don't believe you, and like, what is up with this woman and all of that? You must get, I mean, there are skeptics out there.
Oh, for sure, all the time. And so I left a very left brain world. So I was a federal administrative law judge and lawyer for many years. And suddenly I find this shaman's path, and my son passes, and I go off around the world. So yeah, people thought I was totally crazy. In fact, people went to my daughter and said, some friends of mine, and said, your mother's grieving and she's not in her right mind and she's going to really regret this. I had a lifetime appointment. And my daughter said, well, I think my mother should shake her rattle and release her inner butterfly. Right? It's so beautiful because she's an engineer, very left brain. I don't know where that came from, but totally supportive of me and this journey. And yeah, so lots of people think I'm crazy, but it's the funniest thing that people thought I would think of, thought that I was the craziest, come to me kind of secretly and say, can you do a session for me? Can you look at this? Can you look, even like my daughter will come, can you look, I lost my wedding ring. Can you look for that? And so sometimes I can find things, right? So even the people that are, sometimes even those people that are the most critical are the ones that'll come in the back way. They may not want anybody to know that they've come to see me or see a shaman, right? So lots of times shamans are kind of the last resort. When the doctors don't work and the psychologists don't work and the psychiatrists don't work, what's left? So maybe we'll turn to a spiritual person.
What is the technical definition or the technical difference between a shaman and a medium?
Oh gosh, yeah. So mediums, I do a lot of mediumship too, and I'm trained as a medium, but mediums deal with getting messages from the other side, and that's sort of their exclusive bailiwick,
Right.
finding out where the person is or where they went or what they want or answering a question. But shamans do a lot of other things. We work in the energy field, the luminous energy field, and you kind of know that you have it, but you don't think about it, and you notice it's gone when you see someone who's passed. And they don't have that spark of life. They don't have that energy, the electrons, neutrons, everything that's firing and wiring together. And so that's where shamans work. We look for imprints. We help heal the past, old stories that maybe repeating patterns that are keeping us stuck. We look for entities or energies, dark entities or energies that might have invaded us. We pick up all kinds of things when we go to bars or we go to restaurants. There are little things that we pick up, and shamans can get rid of those, remove those heavy energies. Souls, as we go through life and are wounded and things happen to us, we lose our soul parts. And the parts that we lose are the healed parts that couldn't take the trauma and go in the Andean mythology to live in the underworld and are kept safe there until we're ready to call them back. And so bringing those soul parts back and allowing someone to feel whole again is so important, and helping people to die. And I do a lot of helping with people to transition, and also helping with survivors. I really focused a lot on survivors in my book, but helping, deal a lot with suicides, because a lot of people have been given this false impression that if you commit suicide, you're going to hell, and that there's actually hell. I've never found hell anywhere, but spirits sometimes get stuck in fear and don't want to go to the light, don't want to cross over. So this is a place where Ben and I can help them. Ben will say, hey, come on, I'll show you the way. And I can open up the portal and help them to go. So I know it sounds a little freaky, but it's sort of my world now.
So if I want a session or something, you just book sessions with you, and you do all of that.
I can do all that. Yeah, KarenJohnson.net is my website. And so people can go there and sign up for a session with me, or I have some free things coming up in November and December, a prayer ceremony for anybody who's lost someone. It's we celebrate the layers of their lives and non-suffering. How can we not suffer? How can we release our suffering. So there's some free things coming up in November and December. And I have a 5-week class starting in January. We'll go through my book. So it's based on the medicine wheel and 16 practices. So the medicine wheel has 4 directions. And so each week we're going to go through 4 practices and a direction. So at the end, people can get to that place of rebirth, creating a new life out of the ashes of the old one.
All right. Well, I might have to book a session.
Okay, all right. Sounds fantastic.
I know. I'm excited. Do you know that Laura Lynn Johnson, who writes about signs, she's an author. Well,
I don't know that one. I'll have to look her up.
She came on my podcast and she sees signs everywhere and is a medium and all that. And I said she was on the podcast, I was like, well, if anyone just comes in, just let me know, to our little podcast. And she was like, actually, your grandmother very rudely has sort of barged her way in. She's been pestering me all day. And I was like, that does sound like my grandmother. Anyway, she told me she had come on a certain day because that day had significance. And I said, no, it really doesn't. And it wasn't until later that day that I realized that my mother had dropped off my grandmother's ashes that morning to my house. So that was, anyway, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So anyway, I believe in all of it. I believe in, but then I have people on my podcast too, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, the scientist, who says there was nothing there before, there is nothing there after. What do you think of that?
Yeah, well, I think that quantum physics, he needs to learn a little more about quantum physics or focus a little more. There's that energy field, that consciousness, that collective that's there and has always been there and always will be there for us to tap into. So whether you want to call it soul or you want to call it God or you want to just call it this collective consciousness, quantum physics is supporting what shamans and other energy healers knew all along, but didn't know what to call it. So I think that maybe that's old science. New science is supporting other ways of looking at things, and including existence.
So for people who are missing their loved ones today, what do you say to them?
Gosh, know that they're there, and know that they already know that you love them, that you don't need to suffer anymore. You don't need to hold on to prove to them anything or anybody anything, and that your healing will allow them to go and be free and do what they need to do on the other side. So sometimes if you can't heal for yourself, heal for your loved one. Don't we always do that as moms? Can't do for ourselves, we'll do for our kids. And so this is one more opportunity to kind of do for your kid.
Karen, thank you for sharing your experience with grief, with how to navigate through it and learn more about it than we never thought possible, and sharing Ben's story with the rest of us. And, I know you have found all the good and have made this whole life for yourself, but I am sorry for you and him that he's not here, but maybe that's the way it was supposed to be. Or I feel like you've made so much peace with this that I hate to even say I'm sorry when this might be the way it was supposed to go. But anyway, thank you for sharing the whole experience and dedicating your life to helping so many other people.
Thank you for having me, and I appreciate it.
Your pleasure. All right, take care. Thank you so much. I'm going to schedule a session.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.